Lovely. And so are you, because you're watching this. Welcome. Welcome to 1,000 Words. Welcome to the nicest pub in town. And welcome to the review of the Asahi Optical Company Japan SMC Pentax M 50mm f1.4. Always a treat. Having this lovely Zimand IPA today. Locally brewed craft beer. Excellent at that. Just 30 kilometers down that way is where the factory for this beer is. So check out this wonderful color. Really, really nice amber color, and the taste, oh man. Splendid. Quite a confident, determined bitterness. Very, very flavorful. This lens is small. Focus to infinity, this lens is really, really small. Quite a compact little bugger. Even extended to the minimum focusing distance of 45 centimeters. It's really not much larger. Compared to a lot of other fast 50s I've tried, this lens is small. Extremely well built, entirely made out of metal and glass. Very solid piece of engineering. There's no looseness, there's no shake. Everything works great. An aperture system ranging from f1.4 to f22 with half-stop detents. Very confident clicks at that, allowing for really precise maneuvering. A focus throw of about, what is it, like 190 degrees. Very smooth at that, really creamy and buttery smooth. Very well built. I like the build quality of this lens a lot. It's in a pretty good condition actually. It was serviced recently, and after a proper cleaning, lubrication and adjustments, I do need to make you aware there might be quite a significant caveat to this whole review I'm doing here, because well, there is no shortage of reviews on this lens on the internet. I thought I might just as well add my 2 cents to the story, because my experience seems to be quite different at times, well, ranging from slightly to significantly different from the experience of others on the internet. And let me just check my exposure, because the sun went down and it's still okay. I was saying my experience is quite significantly, often times significantly different from that of other people as far as the optical performance of this lens. But before getting to that, let me just offer a few technical tidbits about this lens. Produced between 1977 and 1984, this features a Pentax PK mount. It's the mount Pentax adopted after ditching M42. Minimum focusing distance of 45 centimeters, just like I mentioned earlier. Pretty standard as far as 50mm lenses go, plural. A diagonal field of view on full frame cameras of 47 degrees and a horizontal field of view of 40 degrees. f1.4, f22, half-stop detents, I mentioned that. 8 slightly rounded aperture blades, an optical construction of 7 elements in 6 groups, with a weight of just 235 degrees. That's just a couple of potatoes. Or rather, more than a couple, about 3 or 4, depending on the size. Less than half what this beer weighs. Yeah, it's a small lens. It's a small, light lens at that. But speaking of optical performance, because that's what really matters, and the caveat I mentioned earlier, it's now the story is like this. I am either tremendously spoiled by quite a few brilliant fast 50s I've tried before this, or I've set my expectations for this lens quite a bit too high, or a combination of both, or I have a bad copy, because while other people seem to think this is really the bee's knees, it's not my experience. And let's talk about exactly that. My experience with this lens, while generally and overall was a pleasant one, I did enjoy using it. Firstly, and perhaps especially so because of this wonderful construction of the buttery smooth focusing ring, the confident and precise aperturing, everything about this lens and the handling of this lens is great. So maybe that played a good factor in it. But the images it makes, when judged like a normal person does, looking at them zoomed out completely, they're really very nice. It's when you pixel peep that quite some egregious flaws become apparent. And it might be just my copy, because as I mentioned before, some people seem to think this is brilliant, and I don't necessarily agree. Wide open, this lens is hella soft. It's not usual wide open soft. This lens is soft. It's pretty much almost unusable if you don't do a bit of sharpening in post. This lens has quite significant purple fringing, green fringing at times, very apparent chromatic aberrations. I dare you to shoot it directly into a strong source of light or into the sun, because it flares readily and spectacularly, and the flares are not really, they're not pleasant. They're really kind of like detracting from the image. There are ways to go around that. You can either move to the right, move to the left, go around and avoid shooting it directly into a strong source of light, or stop it down, or use a hood, or shield it with your hand. There are ways around it, but I've seen a lot of lenses perform a lot better when shot directly into the light. I've also seen a lot of lenses perform a lot better when it comes to chromatic aberrations. And very much so when we are speaking of sharpness. I've seen pretty much all other fast 50s I've tried seem to be considerably sharper than this lens is, wide open. Now, when you do stop it down, and starting from f4 onwards, and very decidedly so at f8, this lens comes into its own, and image quality improves dramatically. It's sharp, it's correct, there's no trace of chromatic aberration. There's no trace of softness. Everything just really looks spot on. But then again, most lenses shine, well, excuse the pun, it's an unintended one. Most lenses do exhibit their best behavior stop down. It's wide open where it matters and what interests me, a wide open performance. And this lens doesn't live up to expectations. I might seem like a Debbie Downer, and it's certainly not my intention, because as I mentioned previously, my overall experience with this lens was a pleasant one. It's really nice to shoot with. The images it makes are generally really good and definitely serviceable if you don't pixel peep. If you don't zoom in all the way to 100% and look for flaws, you're not going to find them, because this lens delivers, at least on a general level. Am I just completely blown out? Yeah, I think so. Let me just perhaps adjust the exposure a little more. Strong sunlight. My face might be in complete darkness. But hey, let's go with it and see where this takes us. Really interesting lighting on my face. Well, it is what it is. If this video doesn't ever make it to YouTube, it's the lighting. This lens delivers beautiful colors though. Really wonderful at that. And don't get me started on the bokeh. More about that later. Colors are lively, punchy, confidently saturated while not being over the top. They have this sort of elegance a lot of vintage lenses share, but this seems like more than others. It's subdued, it's kind of elegant in the way it renders colors. It's not screaming at you. Colors are not nuclearly vibrant, but they're punchy and lively. They're really, really something to look at. Excuse the terrible pun. But yeah, they are. It's really great as far as color reproduction goes. A bit on the warmer side of the spectrum, but then again, white balance is something I just mentioned for the sake of it, because it's really never an issue, because you just click a few buttons in post-production and done. You solve your white balance. If you shoot raw, and if you don't, what are you doing? Black and whites are really probably the strong suit of this lens. I love shooting black and white images with it. While not being overly contrasty, the black and white tones this lens makes are really, really pleasant. There's a very fine gradation between darks and lights. Darks are dark enough, lights are bright enough, so that probably, I would say, at least as far as my experience goes, black and white is where this lens shines, together with portraits or images where you need subject separation, because the bokeh and depth of field blur this lens makes are just spectacular. I've made a few comparison videos between several other Fast 50s, links in that corner. It's one of them, yeah. I never get it right. Sometimes I do. Seldom. But yeah, I've made a few comparison videos, and it's bokeh and depth of field blur where this lens shines. Again, the terrible pun. But yeah, the depth of field blur is really smooth really creamy colors and shapes meld together. It's really something special. The bokeh is slightly defined and characterful, but it's never nervous, it's never distracting. It's gentle, it's pleasant, and it really goes to show that I need beer. Had a bit of a brain freeze while talking about the bokeh of this lens and the depth of field blur. Yeah, it's really fantastic. It's really, really great, really pleasant. Subject separation is wonderful. Makes for wonderful, beautiful images. Where does that leave us now? Build quality is excellent. Images are overall and generally really nice. Just don't shoot it wide open is probably what I mean. I'm not sure what to make of this. I would love to try a second copy, but I don't own a second copy. And I honestly don't intend to purchase another one because I'm not sure exactly why, but I don't plan to, so take all this with a considerable grain of salt. There are my honest and true impressions, but they might not be law. I mean, a lot of people seem to sing quite a bit of a praise to this lens, and their experience seems to differ substantially from mine at times. Now, this lens is for sale, and it's not only because of its sometimes lacking performance, at least as far as wide open goes, but because I own quite a few Fast 50s, and I'm not a lens collector. I'm a photographer and I use my lenses as tools. Now, while I do enjoy trying out a lot of lenses for the sake of doing reviews, for the sake of knowing what's what and what everything does and how they perform, I find no use in owning a lot of them. I mean, there's the Olympus, there's the Konica, there's the Carl Zeiss, soon to be reviewed on the channel after it gets a proper CLA. I'm sat with 4 50mm 1.4 lenses, and it's certainly about 3 more than I need, but hey, it is what it is. That said, it kind of brings me to the end of my review. This has been Radu, this has been 1,000 words, this has been the Pentax 50mm f1.4, this has been Zimand, a wonderful locally brewed beer. Thank you for watching. If you're feeling so inclined, do consider subscribing to the channel, clicking the bell in order to be notified of future uploads. If you want to support my work here, by far the most helpful thing you can do is to like the video and share it with your friends. There's also a Buy Me a Coffee and a PayPal link down below if you're feeling generous and want to throw a buck or two down my way. I'm certainly going to be grateful for that, because beer doesn't come free. Although, I think in a perfect world, I think beer is free. So are lenses. I'll leave you with that. I hope you enjoyed this. Until next time, I bid you farewell. Ta-ta.